Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Leading Millennials webinar brought to you by your Vanderbilt Alumni Association. I'm Drew Webb, Assistant Director of Student Alumni Engagement with the Alumni Association. We had over 100 people register for today's webinar, and I'm so glad that so many of you could join us today. This webinar is just one resource of many that Vanderbilt provides to our alumni, so be sure to familiarize yourself with the additional services that we offer at vuconnect.com/career. Today's webinar will last around 30 minutes with time at the end for questions. So feel free to type your questions as you have them into the question box, and we'll make sure to get to those at the end. I'll facilitate a Q&A with Cherrie at the end. And we're also recording today's webinar, and I'll be sharing the link so you can watch it later via email later this week. And now I'm super pleased to introduce you to today's presenter, and she's a Vanderbilt alumni and professor, Cherrie Clark. Cherrie currently serves as a professor of the practice of management and director of the MS Finance program at Owen Graduate School of Management, where she works with students, faculty, staff, alumni, and companies who hire graduates to create a best experience for each student in the program. Prior to joining the Owen faculty, Cherrie was an associate professor of the practice of managerial studies at Vanderbilt University, where she served as director of the managerial studies program. Her teaching experience includes investment, marketing, and entrepreneurship. She has taught at Vanderbilt since 2005. In May of 2011, Professor Clark was named the Faculty Member of the Year during the annual Chancellor Hurd Greek Awards. Prior to Vanderbilt, Professor Clark was a partner for 13 years with Executive Perspectives, an entrepreneurial venture providing executive education to companies such as IBM, Xerox, and AT&T. Professor Clark was a management consultant with Bain Company in Boston before joining Executive Perspectives. Cherrie has an MBA from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College and a BA in Business Administration from Vanderbilt University. I'm excited to now turn over today's presentation to Cherrie.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for taking your after lunch hour to spend it with me. Now, we can tell if you start to nod off, so be careful about that. So let's get started. The first question is, why all the talk about millennials? They didn't do that for the boomers or the Gen X. What's the big deal here? I want to give you perspective on their view of the world, how it's different from that of the boomers or the Gen X that immediately preceded them, some key generational differences, and some implications for our workplace as well as our families. First of all, who are millennials and why did they get that name? They're roughly 20 to 35 years old today. The name came from the fact that millennials this generation came of age in the new millennium. So the definition changes a bit, but it's pretty practical for all our working purposes here. And I can't see you or hear you, but I want you to think of a word that you would use to describe millennials. If you're like other groups that I have worked with, some interesting words come to mind. Creative and ambitious, eager to get feedback, and also some words like entitled or not loyal, those kinds of words. So if you're millennial, I forgive you. I apologize for those words. But let's get to the root of why that happens. I'll give you some insight into how millennials, how they've come of age and the different factors that have influenced them. Because, yes, indeed, they do rule. They are actually now, as of April, according to a report by CBS, the largest population in our country. They're the biggest generation. And you can see that unfortunate orange line, of which I'm a member, the boomer population declining, and the others declining as well. But millennials continue to increase primarily due to, well, obviously due to immigration. They've already been born. They're also now the largest generation in the workforce. So it's not that they're coming and we're going to have this massive movement. They're already here. This is a reality of the life that we're living now in our workplaces and our families. And by 2030, they will be 75% of the workforce. That's only 14 years from now. they are the workforce of the future. So for those of us in business situations, finding out how to leverage this generation to whom we're giving our businesses and our future is critical. Now, for them, the world has changed. Look at these two photos, one taken in 2005, both in St. Paul's Cathedral at the funeral of Pope John Paul II, and then an announcement of Pope Francis. You can probably see there's a little bit of difference. A few new devices have shown up over those 8 years. And yes, technology is now ubiquitous. We carry computers in our pockets now. And it's changed how we live, this digital media. If this is for everyone, not just millennials, but even as of 2015, last year, 5.6 hours per day were spent by all adults on media. Primarily, you see primarily on mobile now. We've made the switches flipped since 2013 up to mobile. So 5.6 hours per day. It's probably only increased. It certainly has for me. Millennials are spending their 5.6 hours per day, and actually it's interesting what they're doing with it. The data shows from Bank of America this year that they spend more time with their smartphones than they do with their significant other. So smartphones, technology is just embedded into their lives. And this technology, this idea of being raised as a digital native in a world rich in technology, has changed the workforce environment in an interesting way. When I started out my career some years ago, I can assure you that my boss knew more about every single topic that I would need in my work than I did. Even though I had a wonderful Vanderbilt education, he or she knew more than I did. Today, hiring managers say that the millennials come in possessing skills that the former generations don't have. That creates a bit of an upside-down relationship in some respects with millennials and their older bosses or supervisors. So, in fact, I read an article addressed to millennials about things not to say at work to your boss. And number one was, "Oh, that's easy." And if you're a parent, you probably have the experience where your millennial child takes the device from you and says, "Here, let me do that for you." So that kind of changes the authority balance a bit in the working environment. Let me add one little caveat here too. If you are millennial, I apologize for lumping you into a generic, stereotypical bucket, because one thing we do know about millennials is every millennial wants to be very different. So my apologies for that. And I can assure you some millennials have baby boomer values and some baby boomers have millennial values. So just a little caveat there as we go along. So the authority balance is shifted at work. Now these devices that they all have and spend a great amount of time on, they use them differently. We all spend a lot of time with our media, but millennials tend to use the new media, online TV and video, social media, internet streaming, etc., whereas non-millennials are balanced more toward the more traditional radio, TV, those kinds of things. And that leads to an interesting dichotomy. So this is true for everyone, but particularly for millennials because they're spending more time online. They're two of the three most used sources of news and information are peer influenced. Social certainly is peer influenced. Search, the more we search, the more it moves up the categories in Google and Bing and others. So that's influenced too. So we're getting our media knowledge, millennials in particular, from our peers who deem it important. And this leads to this situation. Edelman does a trust survey every year. This is the 2016 version. And it turns out that millennials find people who are like themselves much more credible than historically they found others. So technical experts, yes, they've gone up, in fact, from 2015 to 2016. Academic experts have withheld their position of influence. Thank you very much. I like seeing that. But look at that. A person like yourself, up 6 percentage points between 2015 and 2016. So they trust themselves, trust each other. Can they trust institutions? Well, the Gallup poll done in June suggests that confidence in the institutions is waning. So I've circled the ones that have the particularly deep declines. They are listed in order of the 2016 numbers. Military has the highest percentage confidence. And you see it compared to 2006, 10 years ago. So within the last 10 years, the church has lost 11 percentage points of confidence, so to speak. Banks are down, clear reasons for that, the recession, of course. But also newspapers and television news are down dramatically. And Congress, we thought they were scraping the bottom of the barrel. In fact, they have even lower to go. I presume you can probably count, 0 is the limit on that one. So they're not having confidence in our news organizations and our traditional institutions in our society. And mom and dad, that role has changed as well. If you look at father's role, this is from UBS, millennials were asked, how would you describe your parents' role? For boomers, the biggest category for fathers, 57%, dad's an authority figure. And but for millennials, the biggest category is mentor. Dad's a mentor to me. Yeah, some 36% say authority figure, but mostly the biggest group say he's a mentor or friend. Compare that to the moms too. Boomers, mom is an authority figure. My mom certainly is an authority figure for me. I associated with the people she wanted me to associate with, spent the time in places where she wanted me to spend it, and if you're a boomer, you know what I'm talking about. Whereas today, for millennials, moms are more like a friend or a peer. They're not an authority figure. So that's it. Millennials aren't getting their authority from institutions. They're not getting it from mom and dad as much as in the past. And they're looking to each other. So in general, they're less trusting of others because of their life experiences, which we'll get into in a moment. But only 19% of millennials in 2012 would say that, generally speaking, most people can be trusted. Us boomers are a more trusting group, and so is everyone else, except for millennials. One of the reasons for this lack of trust is the income inequality. It feeds into this narrative of loss of trust and respect for institutions. If you go back to 1993 and equate things to 0 at that point, changes in real income for the top 0.01% up 109%, whereas for the bottom 90%, it's fairly flat at 2%. The top 1%, yes, they are doing much better, as we've heard on the news. 62% increase in real income over those time frames. And this number, I found this recently in the Washington Post. This goes back to 1725, to the founding of our country in 1776. The top 1% share of income. We'll focus only on the U.S. in the red, but it was really high during the robber baron times. I believe one Cornelius Vanderbilt was doing particularly well during those years. But I did not realize until I saw this graph and read the data from the study that now we're at the same level of concentration of wealth that we were back then. That's a shocking statistic to me. So it's not surprising that we see these popular movements such as Occupy Wall Street. On the more good news from millennial perspective, I should say, is this study I found yesterday, actually. Democracy is becoming less essential to millennials. This is a graph by birth cohort. So our millennials are the ones born in the 80s there, and you can pick your own decade and compare your numbers. But it's a steady decline in the percentage of people who feel it's essential to live in a country that is governed democratically. So for me, I'm in my generation, it's about 55% of people say it's essential. For millennials, it's more like 32%. A big difference in perspective on the importance of democracy to our livelihood. And adding a little more texture to that, having a democratic political system is a bad or very bad way to run this country. In the 25 to 34 and 16 to 24 age brackets, millennials, our millennial group, about 22 to 24% of millennials would agree with that statement. Wow. Wow. Whereas in my age segment, only about 7% no, that's Europe, I'm sorry, only about 15% or 14% would agree with that statement. A very big difference in how millennials and other generations view the political system and the fruits of that system. A survey was done this past week, you may have seen it, that given a choice, 23% of millennials would prefer death by a meteor over Clinton and Trump. I mean, obliterating the entire Earth would be better than, according to 23% of our population, our millennial population, than having either one of them elected. A little cynicism at root here. This data, these facts I've shown you leads to this point of view. This is from Edelman. To me, this is the $1 million slide. So if there's one slide that you take away, I hope this is it, because this explains a lot in my point of view. So in the old model, elites had access to more and better information, and they made good decisions on behalf of the people in their organizations and in their state, county, whatever the political situation was. And the idea was that those elites, their interests were interconnected. So if they did well financially, a rising tide would lift all ships. Everyone else would do well financially and otherwise. And this path to becoming an elite was open to all through education, through hard work, and through the systems that we had in place. But since that time, the old model, we've had a democratization of information and more information available. So if you're holding your phone, you've got the world at your fingertips. The things you can find out are astounding in seconds or nanoseconds. Coupled with that, the emperor has no clothes kind of syndrome, where high-profile revelations of greed and misbehavior across our revered institutions, from the church to the Congress to other places. And this income inequality notion of people feeling like, I can't get there from here, and the gap is just getting worse. So that leads to a lack of trust in the top, more trust in, I'll trust my brothers and sisters, the people who are with me, my peers, I have trust in them, and more mass movements based on dissatisfaction. We mentioned Occupy Wall Street, and certainly Black Lives Matter fall into that category. So the world is different now. Is it any surprise that our millennials are different and behave differently? Forbes asked the 500 nominees for their 30 under 30 list about the biggest challenge facing the world. Top 3, global warming, terrorism, and the economy. And let's take a moment to think about global warming. Whatever your points of view, if you view that global warming issue, it is their problem. It's not going to affect me greatly in my lifetime, but it certainly will affect them in their lifetime. They're the ones that have to deal with the ramifications of global warming and somehow put a stop to it or curb it in some way. It's their problem. Terrorism concerns are also growing and will continue to be their problem, and it's more nefarious and more difficult to get at. The number of incidences around the world continues to climb, and I don't think anyone doubts that we'll see more and more activity on our continent. But this time it's different. It's a different kind of threat. For me, as a boomer, the enemy was 5,300 miles away in Moscow. Odds of me going to Moscow were 0. And remember the drills, those of you in the 60s, to protect yourself from nuclear fallout, we were supposed to get under our desk and put our hands over our head. Remember that? I think that's probably been scientifically refuted as a protection against nuclear devastation. But for millennials, the threat is not thousands of miles away. It's among us. It's in our elementary schools. We see Sandy Hook there. It's certainly in New York in our World Trade Center. The picture on the upper right, those 3 men are in Belgium, and on those caddies are bombs that will soon explode and take the lives of 2 of our former Owen students. And in the bottom picture, our group of Owen students who went to Israel on a project last spring break, and one of them, Taylor Force, did not return due to a knife attack on a stroll to the dinner site. So the enemy is not way out there. He or she is among us as we go about our business and our lives. So it's not any wonder to me, based on really looking at the situation in the world facing millennials, where they're thinking a change might be necessary. This is the Pew Research Center, and percent who say the U.S. because of reliance on principles versus ability to change. For millennials, 62% say we're successful because we're able to change our constitution, change our way of doing things, change our technology, change much in our lives. Whereas boomers, we're relied on principles. That's what has led us to success in this world. So for millennials, it's time to change the world. The situation that is, if you just run the trend lines on out, is unsustainable. Something has to be done. And more, they're feeling like they're the generation that by no choice of their own, it has to happen, and it has to happen within. So let's take a little break and look at a different perspective, and that's some demographics to shed some even more light on the differences in millennials. They're our most ethnically diverse generation. This data from Pew Research shows millennials are 57% white, and that will certainly change by 2030. The babies born are already majority non-white. So that balance is shifting. And an interesting statistic to add to that sheds some complexity on it is 11% of U.S.-born children have at least one immigrant parent. Very different environment than what I grew up in as a boomer. They're educated. Their educational attainment is high and growing. Those who've had some post-secondary outside of high school education, you see that about 20%, 18%, plus getting a degree, and this is ages 25 to 34. That means 65% of these people have been to college. That increases expectations of what they're going to, the job, their contribution they're going to make to society, and their place in our society. Along with that, educational attainment has come a ton of debt, $1.3 trillion of debt. And as of 2015, about 70% of students walked out in their cap and gown with debt to start their careers with. And the amount of debt is not trivial. This is the average debt per borrower back to 93. In 2015, it was $35,000. Fortunately, our interest rates are low right now, but student loan debt, it's not sitting at 3%, and a lot of it's much higher than that. So that's a big headwind economically to our millennials entering the workforce. And unfortunately, the wages have not kept up or increased enough to offset this additional debt. These are Median wages in constant 2015 dollars, so adjusted for inflation. Median half above, half below. There's our median wages of $43,000 in 2015. And you see the pattern, just look at the trend line on the amount of debt that is servicing. So the gap is narrowing on disposable income that they can use for other things after servicing their debt, which sends many of them back home to mom and dad. Remember those friends they have back at home and those mentors? Hey, given the economic situation, I'm moving home. This is the share of 18 to 34-year-olds living with parents. The gray bars are recession periods, and you see that they started to really come home. And many of you, in boomers, you've had that experience. The sad news for them in the economic situation is everyone, they dream of owning homes too. My data shows that. But that dream is less and less attainable. This is the probability of owning a home for 18 to 34-year-olds as of 2014. It has continued. The long-term trend is down, and most precipitously since 2006 housing crisis. So I think all those factors in this long ramp up to adulthood and career are delaying marriage. They're delaying marriage even longer. It goes back to 1890, and we're at a high in terms of age at marriage, at your first marriage. So delaying gratification of their long-term wishes. So millennials think they're different. Well, you know, they are different. They are digital natives in an always-on world, ethnically diverse, highly educated, in debt, losing ground on incomes, living at home longer with mom and dad, delaying marriage longer, and renting, you know, Uber, Airbnb, Rent the Runway, all these things, sharing economy, and voting differently. They're doing things differently than we have in the past. So in the last few minutes before we do the Q&A, I want to just highlight a couple things. It's of a much larger body of research about what millennials want from their work and their lives, given this environment that they're in. And come back to college with me to Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs, Psychology 101. And you remember it because you still live it, I'm sure. But the idea is that the physiological needs of human beings must be met before they can worry about safety and security and love and belonging, etc. So if you don't have those met, you're not worrying about self-actualization. There's some interesting work done by Espinoza in 2010 that used this paradigm in a little novel way to think about, well, what does that say about where millennials are? So in our society, there is food and water and warmth available. Not everyone avails himself, but that's met. So the notion is past generations have worked to meet many of the needs, leaving millennials with the wonderful luxury of worrying about self-actualization, trying to fulfill their potential, including their creativity. And so for them, they want to do that not just outside of work when they get home at 5 or 6 or 7, but blend it all together. They want work that is meaningful and helps them increase their feeling of self-actualization and being all that they can be. So it's not work-life balance for millennials, it's work-life integration. So they'll be answering their emails at 10 o'clock, but they'll also be checking Facebook at 10 a.m. in the morning. So that integration is, you know, if you are helping them achieve their goals, their full potential, they'll work all hours of the day for you. This question highlights this. This is a study by Bain Company of MBAs. They asked their MBAs, what does success mean to you? And here were the choices available to them. And here's how they define success. Success, whether you're male or female, is about impact. Clearly about impact certainly for women, far and away the #1 choice. You actually see self-actualization on the list. That's important for men and women. Now, men do have a little bias toward wealth. Well, wealth is a good thing, but women too on that front. But it's not about reaching the highest levels of the corporate or government ladder. It's about making a difference. This study, my last slide, second to last slide, this study is for managers and millennials view from the Career Advisory Board. You ask managers what millennials want. You see that in the blue. They say high pay. Well, yeah, I want high pay too. But if you ask millennials, they say meaningful work is number one, followed by high pay, a sense of accomplishment, all those things that tie back to the other topics we've discussed. So if you add it up, for millennials, 73% of satisfaction and importance is not about money. It's about those other things. So if you're an employer, think hard about how at your work their work is meaningful. How do you connect it to the purpose of the organization? And how do you give them that sense of accomplishment? And pay is good too, but worry about these other things will give you the most leverage you have. And for those of you with millennial children, you can perhaps understand better some of the choices they make in their work life. They probably won't go for the most high-paying job unless it offers all of these other things. And you may be thinking, oh my God, you've got student debt, and you've got to start a house, and you've got payment for a house, all these things. They're not seeing that. They're looking at it through a different lens. So my point of view on this is we're handing them a very tough world with a lot of challenges where it's very foggy as to how this society is going to get where we need to go. So the challenges are daunting, and they're going to be making some changes. My feeling is that the changes that they will make it a better place for all of us, where all of us, who doesn't want meaningful work, who doesn't want a sense of accomplishment in our daily activities, to make a difference in our lives. So I've spent a career working with millennials, and I've got confidence that they're going to deliver us from some of the mistakes that we've made and make it all a better place for us. So this is what it looks like at Vanderbilt today. If you're a Nashvilleian, you know I'm not far off the mark. Please come back and join us here anytime and all the time. So on that beautiful picture of your beloved Kirkland, let's open it up to a few questions.
All right, we do have several questions that have come in. So the first one is asking, is the information about debt referring to undergraduate debt? Do you have any information about typical debt for a millennial with a postgraduate degree, and how can the job market keep up with the degree requirements for the jobs that are available?
Well, the first question about debt, I don't have it broken out. Those are aggregate numbers of graduate school debt as well as undergraduate. My guess it's more skewed toward undergraduate debt, as graduate schools have stipends and other things to help there, but I don't know that. That's just my bias from working at Vanderbilt for some time. In terms of, and the second part of the question was?
How can the job market keep up with the degree requirements for the jobs that are available?
That's a question that's been keeping me up at night lately. I've been reading some things about what the world is going to be like. In more pervasive use of technology and everything. If there's data out there, it will be transmitted according to the seers in some fashion and made useful to us. We already can see what's inside our refrigerator based on some refrigerators and apps and etc. So another quote that I heard that struck fear in my heart, frankly, was anything that can be measured, that with which productivity is an issue, if you can measure productivity of it, will be replaced by machines. So that is the $64,000 question you've just asked. What do we do with all of this talent, educated talent, who are equipped and eager to move into jobs of meaning and impact when we are facing some difficulties in our economy here of employing people are college educated. Of course, the college educated get jobs much faster than the ones at the bottom of the rung, and they in fact are suffering the worst. And you've seen that data too, I'm sure.
Okay, here's another one. How can employees handle the mental health of their millennial employees in the face of a frustrating job market?
I would say, think about how, well, two things. Keep them focused on the bigger purpose and help understand or seek to understand what their goals are. I just spoke with a student this morning who was needing career help and advice. And I said, well, you know what you want. Get your mentors there at your organization. Help them think through this. What's the next move for you? What skill sets do you need to accomplish her goal was working for a social enterprise organization. So we can help them on that front. In terms of alleviating some of their frustration, I think we should think carefully about how we give them feedback and the frequency of feedback. If you are a millennial and avid, Instagram happens to be the biggest social media platform for millennials now. If you're on Instagram, you post something, you get feedback immediately. You get, 50 likes or whatever it is, and you can have all these emoticons to see how people think about what you did or what you posted or what you thought. This old performance evaluation system that still hangs around of, we'll give you a performance review a year from now. What? That makes no sense in today's real-time environment. So well-chosen feedback on action, things that instead of, oh, you did a good job. No, your report was very thorough and it got singled out at this meeting that we had. That specific feedback can do wonders for millennials. They're used to it. We've trained them to be used to it. We've given trophies for participation. So think how you reward the good behavior you're getting from millennials and how you help mold them and give them more experiences to correct some of those things you think could be better.
Great. If you were a millennial today, how would you prepare yourself for the shift we'll see in the job market over the next few decades? Automation, gig economy, stagnating incomes, etc.
Our government is focused on STEM professions. Yeah, go get a STEM job, something in science, technology, and etc. I think that's how we're going to best position ourselves, engineering and others, to have a quantitative background so that you understand that how that all works. Those jobs are at a premium, and our millennials, who particularly our children, I'll speak to children, want to come to school, come to a place like Vanderbilt, and they take art history and they take these wonderful expanding things that are very exciting. It's our job as parents and mentors to help them take that passion and track it onto something that will allow them to achieve a lifetime of satisfaction, both financially and for their family, and etc. That's not always easy. Some of our majors out of school do not have a clear, solid a career path that will sustain them for the future, especially given the rising expectations. That's a tough one.
Okay, here's another one. Do you know if millennials prefer working in a very small business, 10 or less, or for larger companies?
I've had that conversation hundreds of times, and I will have a student come in and say, oh, I have this great opportunity with a startup. It's a friend of mine. They have this cool experience or an app or something like that. I really want to start there. And the old baby boomer in me and all my friends who are boomers say, you know what, go to a company, a larger company that's going to train you and give you opportunity to see a bigger picture. Then do something on your own. I think millennials' instinct is to go where it's more exciting, where they have more control and autonomy. That's part of the trust issue. It's also part of the idea that I'm educated, I have opportunities, I know what I want to do. So smaller is more attractive to them. But the experience you get from a larger company is pretty important and pivotal. So I encourage them to do a track that includes both. Maybe start bigger and then go small. It's harder to do it in the opposite way, to start small and then join a bigger organization.
Okay, we had a comment here. Someone commented that they enjoyed the verbiage of work-life integration, and then we also had a question asked, will employee assistance programs be more critical in helping millennials navigate work-life integration and keeping at it while they are in lower-level, low-paying jobs to reduce turnover?
I sure hope so. 'Cause it's really a business imperative because it is expensive. Come join our millennials class that we'll be having next May. But it's very expensive to keep training people. You know, the number you want to keep them as long as you can and keep them employed productively and happy at work. So it's not just catering to millennials, but frankly, given that they're the largest segment of the workforce, businesses have to adapt to keep the best and the brightest. And that's going to mean changing some of the work rules around the place that maybe had meaning before but don't have meaning anymore. So, is it a business imperative that everyone must wear that you can't wear jeans to the office when clients aren't there? Maybe not. Is it a business imperative that everyone has to be in the office during normal working hours from 8 to 5? Maybe there's some flexibility around that. Millennials love that flexibility to balance their lives. So I think it's incumbent on the companies who want to grow and thrive to find a formula that works for them. They're not only meeting their business needs, but also attracting the high caliber millennials who are going to help take them into the next generation when all those boomers retire.
Okay, and one last one to wrap things up. Boomers went through the free love flower power era, then grew into yuppies when they got a little older. How do you see millennials changing as they grow up?
um, well, I'm betting whoever wrote that question knows the answer to that. And I think that's a great observation. Yes, part of this difference is they are young. And youth has an optimism and a brashness about it that, thank God it has that. We wouldn't have our civil rights movement in the 50s or other things that are of great importance in other generations. So there is some of that. And that's an interesting question because it really depends on how the world is going to change. I think the pace of change will continue, is this appropriate, continue to accelerate. So that will drive what they do. Do I see them becoming conservative and becoming more like boomers? No, I don't see that happening again. I had a fairly young manager of millennials saying that they just have to learn, they've got to pay their dues. Well, that is just not a concept. They've already paid their dues. They've been to college. They've racked up this debt. No, it's time to, if it's not important, don't make me do grunt work. I've got a life to live. I've got to reach my potential here. You're not helping me. So keeping that sight line toward the big picture, I think they're going to change all of us to help do that. All of us want meaningful work. So I think they might drag some of the other generations along with them. But will they get more settled down? Absolutely. Families and economics dictate that.
Great. Well, Cherrie, thank you so much for sharing your insight about millennials today. And as a millennial myself, I can tell you that much of what you talked about really rang true. And also, thank you to all of our attendees for participating today. Again, I just want to encourage you to check out all the career resources and events provided to you by the Vanderbilt Alumni Association, including our annual networking night that's taking place in over 30 cities on November 3rd. Later this week, I'll be sending up a follow-up email with a link to the recording from today and a survey about today's webinar, and we'd really appreciate your feedback. Best of luck to all of you as you consider your next steps, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Take care.